The wobble plate assembly attaches to the wobble shaft and to the spindle. It converts the rotating motion of the motor into the linear back and forth motion needed for the blade. It consists of the wobble plate with 2 bearings already pressed into it. Eventually the bearings will go bad, requiring the wobble plate to be replaced. The bearing surface on the end of the wobble plate can also wear over time. Replacing the wobble plate assembly is a repair that you can do yourself, and I'm going to show you how. I'll begin by removing the shoe from the saw. Now remove the shoe release lever. Now use a punch to remove the shoe pin from the saw. Next, I'll remove the boot from the front of the saw. Now I can remove the gearbox from the motor. Now remove the blade clamp from the spindle. It's held in place with a helical retaining ring. Now remove the pin from the clamp. And now the rest of the pieces will come free. The ring is rusted onto the spindle on my saw, so I'll go ahead and clamp the ring in a vise and then use a punch to tap the spindle out. Next, I'll remove the plate inside the gearbox. There's a cap on the front of the gearbox, and I'll remove it. Now I'll remove the nut that was behind the cap. Next, I'll remove the gear from the gearbox. There's a second helical retaining ring that holds the spindle assembly into the gear case, and I'll go ahead and remove that. Now remove the spindle assembly from the gear case. I'll remove the wobble plate from the spindle. The wobble shaft is secured to the wobble plate with a retaining ring, and I'll remove it. With the retaining ring removed, now I can tap the wobble shaft out of the wobble plate bearings. I'll apply some grease to the end of the wobble shaft before inserting it into the new bearings. Then I'll use a rubber mallet to tap it in place. And now I can reinstall the retaining ring. I'll apply some new grease to the end of the wobble plate where it attaches to the shaft. I can place these together and reassemble into the housing. I'll pack some new grease into the gearbox. Now reinstall the gear. As I install the gear, I want to make sure that the recess lines up with the eccentric on the wobble shaft. Now secure the gear with the nut. Now I can reinstall the retaining ring that secures the spindle. Now I can reinstall the cover plate. And I'll secure it with the screws. Now I'll reattach the two halves of the saw. Now I can reassemble the blade clamp. First I'll start with the cover, followed by the spring. The leg on the spring should be pointed more towards the bottom part of the saw. Next I'll install the sleeve. The groove on the sleeve should be pointing out. And I'll align the hole in the sleeve with the hole in the spindle. Now install the cam onto the sleeve. The cam should have the recessed portion pointing out, and there's a groove on this side that aligns with the leg on the spring. Now I want to rotate the cam counterclockwise until there's enough room to insert the pin through the sleeve and the spindle. Like that. Now align the outer sleeve with the cam and secure the clamp with the retaining ring. Now I can replace the nut cap and the rubber boot. Now I can reinstall the shoe pin. Now I can reinstall the shoe release lever. For installation, I'll rotate the shoe pin until the flat is pointed down. Now I'll install one side of the lever onto the pin, and then the other. And I'll finish up by reinstalling the shoe. And now you know how to replace the wobble plate assembly in your recip saw.